It's episode 12 of our series on Rabbi Avrohom Kaplan's Ksavim, and today we're doing the Maimer Hergel v'Chidush. I'm doing this actually the first time ever trying this in thousands of shurim, which is to do a solo Zoom. And the reason I'm trying to do this as a solo Zoom as opposed to just recording on my video recorder on my computer is because I wanted to share the on screen the text of the Rabbi Avrohom, which is not in the published on the website, and that way you can see it in real time, so to speak, as we are learning here by looking at the screen. So the Maimer Hergel v'Chidush is a very it's not completed. It's very short because it was never completed, and it is an astounding Maimer in the question that it raises, and never gets to an answer. There's starts an answer, but it never gets there. And I would say that it's an amazing springboard for thought. And we'll start right off. Hergel v'Chidush. Adam melumad kula bergelim. Person is completely accustomed to habits. Lo rak be'ez panav, yadav v'raglav, not just his face, his hands and his feet. He habituates to do robotic acts, we'd call them today. Back then they were called monkey-like acts. But in order to find favor in the eyes of God, according to his mistake, the tragic mistake, that God wants habitual behavior. That's most of our Torah mitzvahs is mitzvahs and anashim lumada. The mitzvahs people do as by rote, and that person does because he thinks, if I do the habitual thing I'm supposed to do, this will bring to me the blessing and the flow that I want to bring. Vadam, and the person does obviously it's my favorite in human beings' eyes. The person goes through the motions of whatever, whether it be at home, at work, or at school, of appeasing or not appeasing the powers that be. And this is also something which is done habitually, as if sleepwalking. Ki'im gamas chushav, this is not just true about activities, but also person's senses, his mashto, and his thoughts. V'gamas kol magamasor b'chayim, and all of its entire purpose in life. Yachol v'noheg lehargil. He can and is accustomed to do by habit. And this is a definitive piece of evidence, and it is a powerful way of putting it. Very powerful. If there was a certain master who gave his slaves to eat each and every day and to drink yom on a daily basis, and he would command the slave because that after and before he eats, or he drinks, the slave should read in front of him, yom yomo, day in, day out, Toda aruka, a long statement of thanks, which is written in the same specific format, 5 minutes, 3 times a day, each every meal. And that's not enough, but the master will decree on the slave. He should pay attention to what he's saying. He should have kavana, that which his lips express. It should not interrupt in the middle of that formula, no matter what. And this he should do every day that he lives on the surface of the earth. Yom yomo, day in, day out. If whether it's on the way back from himself getting married, or his father's fresh grave, his intent should not be diminished one iota. Or even they cause him, take him in haste to his commercial activity. Was about to collapse. go bankrupt. To his ship was about to flounder and drown at sea. Lo yifnei bo klal l'chol eila. He's not paying attention to any of these things. If he does violate this and get distracted, he'll be punished criminally. What would we say about such a decree? I don't have to specify the what he's talking about, right? It's clear. Would it be in the power of the slave? When his father or his friend is waiting for him outside till he comes out from completing this ritual, to bless his master with tranquility and peace as he has been commanded, and even less than this, even when he is in a state of utter peace, utter tranquility. Will his heart not go rebel? Will he not become repulsed? In that specific, unique version, which is in place in front of him, day and night. Will he find his heart appropriately directed towards the kavana at each and every time, each and every I'm not sure if I translate that. That being done in English. Every time and every hour. And if we're going to ask the slave, okay, you have this burdensome task. How do you conduct yourself with this decree upon you? You're careful in everything you've been commanded. And you're going to say, yes. Not only that, from time to time, at a time when I bench, my heart is alive within me, and it's full of mighty feelings of thanks. And all that which comes out of my mouth, I will carefully monitor. To feel it in my soul, in each and every word. It's laughable, this response. We're going to say to him, you're lying. You are deluding yourself with falsehood. And to understand the depths of your soul, you have not yet succeeded. This is only something which you're doing because you've been brainwashed. It's always been embedded upon you from the time immemorial. You're required to thank your master. Because you were taught this by your father, the slave. Your mother, the slave. And this you've put yourself in put yourself in an impoverished state as a miskein. This plays obviously a phrase on a toy scalta so, but you impoverish yourself, not made yourself intelligent. Toy scalta so is did you make yourself intelligent? Sarcastic way, but this is here's a skanta say calling me. You've done this in impoverished way your entire life. And because of all of this habituation, you've habituated your perspective. If you're truly thankful. Only your friend who stands objectively outside of you can actually understand properly that which is within you. So you don't even have the capacity to assess yourself. You're so brainwashed, you have no idea what yourself are thinking. Now, it is a remarkable statement because we know that we do have this capacity to you, time to time at least, really bench b'kavana or daven b'kavana. Haklalu, the gentleman says, ki machshava, that a thought gam hi meshemesh b'tor aver echad, the thought is also a limb, an organ. K'chol yeser ramach a. Okay, we finished one page, so let's go on to the other page. Um, uh, let's, uh, let's share the screen. Yeah, so it's like one of the Vori Odom. The machshava is just like a limb. Moshe Adam Yachol Argil, so a glove, so a person can accustom his legs, limrut to run in a race, and his hands for work, the craft. So he can accustom his thought to think in a certain way, this way specifically. This is obviously brainwashing. One can brainwash oneself to think in a specific way. And you see, evidently, in a totalitarian regime, in a dictatorship, that's what goes on. People have to accustom themselves to think in a specific way because otherwise they'll get in trouble. But this is true also in many settings. Person, in order to be able to survive, very often has to uh, narrow their thought pattern. Even they don't have to do it. It's very often very convenient to do that. It makes life less anxiety provoking, makes life less open ended and more closed minded, and therefore more tranquil. So therefore, ani omer hu yochol argue. This is a very interesting thought. He says, I say he can accustom. That's not a correct expression. Mi hu hahu hamargil. Who is this he who is accustoming? Halogam hani ayosef pnimi mushpat tadir tadir min hargelim habayim alam minachutz. The innermost I is very often uh, influenced by that which comes from the habits which come from the outside. So, who's the he who's accustoming himself to think in a certain way? So, that's a very interesting answer. I can't have to say cholim hargilo. They, not he, they can accustom him. Perush, meaning the trustworthy agents which emerge from the soul, the shavim elan, bring it, come back to it, to bring their prey, prey, and their acquisition. It's interesting, their prey and their acquisition. In other words, the senses hunt out um, their and acquire all sorts of perceptions from the outside. The five senses, telegraph, which are like telegraph wires, because they're ultimately the connection, just like the telegraph conveys messages from one place to another. It's the only means of conveying messages in that manner. So too, the senses convey the messages from a person from the world to a person. Um, of they can, interesting language, trample on the most, could mean altars, could mean the heights of the nefesh, but it could also mean platforms. It's not clear what he means by bama here. I think in Bikva Sayira, in the mimer there, he uses the word bama to mean a stage. So they trample the stage of that nefesh lusader es kol mozem and arrange all its goings and comings. Betzunos kol varim, in the movement of all the limbs, hargeshim, emotions, machshavas and thoughts, as they desire. Hareim moshlim bekipa, and they rule as if with a great dome, meaning it's the language that Chazal used for an absolute monarchy. a powerful absolute monarchy. The Kvar Pasku Rachamenu Rishonim Zal Shetzorach Adam Mechadesh Davar B'Tfilaso Kol Hay Kol B'Chol Yom. So it's kind of like shifts gears very suddenly. It seems that the senses of a person bring in the impressions of the world, and that's what they brainwash a person to adopt a certain specific approach. And that habituates a person to that approach day in, day out. It sounds like it's not deliberate even. It sounds like that person doesn't do this on his own accord deliberately, because he said it's not he, but it's a person's senses. And a person's response to his own senses are what actually brainwash a person. So, therefore, in order to prevent that brainwashing, a person has to activate his own interior self and be able to actually not be lulled in a specific pattern, even a thought pattern, by the external senses, but rather to arouse himself from the inside. That's what he says. The next line, he says, in footnote, he says here where it comes from, person has to have a new chiddush davening every day. So this din is kind of dormant because of our very, very sad situation. They should shibari learning, because it's clear to us that only at great intervals, very infrequently, very infrequent, nivga, where we meet up, and it's as if it's we don't plan it deliberately even. It's something which we meet up with, and take something which comes from the outside. A moment in which we have a newness, a novelty, something which is a chiddush in our tefillah. So therefore, we say, who are we going to fool? If we wait for such an hour, will be very distant from any concept of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, therefore, therefore we choose that better, the better, because there really is no option. With lip service, lip tefillah. Tefillah is a sign. Assuming you could translate tefillah as service, it translates lip service. Misudar merosh, which is prearranged. Machshavas halev v'ganke misudar meschores rosh, and also our thoughts internally are arranged and directed pre-davening before we get there. That's better than the alternative, which is to choose absolute emptiness in the heart. Which will kill even the small amount of spirit which we have within us. You're saying we choose to pre-intend in our tefillah, and we choose usually the same, I don't know if generic is the right term, but the same recurring intentions, because the alternative is to have nothing. We are truly impoverished, and impoverished is not the right term. We are truly, I can't think of the right term right now, but it's saying we're to be pitied. Woebegone in our woebegone in our souls. So the Chacham Rishonim, they would daven 3 times a day. And 3 times a day they would establish in themselves a new Torah and a new submission to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I have to say about the Chassidim Harishonim, who would spend an hour before davening, and davening an hour coming down from davening. So that's that is the model, which is saying teach us that they were machadish every day in every tefillah, because otherwise it wouldn't take an hour to ramp up. If you have the same kabbanis every day, why would it take an hour to ramp up to tefillah? Certainly, why would it take an hour to ramp down from tefillah? But the idea is that ramping up to tefillah is preparing new thoughts. The idea of ramping down from tefillah is to take those new thoughts with us and find ways to grow, implement them, and then the next we'll do the same thing over again. Now, these Chassidim Rishonim who did this sounds like did it day in day out. That's what Rabbi is saying. But the point is that the difference between Hergel and Chiddush, which I think this mimer is pointing at, is the difference between that which is an internal process and an internal process from the inside out, and external process from the outside in. And almost all the things we do, we learn about from the outside, but it's from whatever sense that we learn about them, and then we try and implement them on the inside. And we don't usually work from the inside out, taking what's inside ourselves and using that to come up with new vistas of thought and new understandings. And even people who are capable of doing that in Lumbus, people doing that when they're learning Gemara and learning whatever other limudim be'iyun they're learning, it's when it comes to Avodas Hashem, it's much more difficult. And we're not trained to do that, certainly from a young age. Let me phrase that. We're never trained to do that. And therefore, Vatir Asam Osi Mitzvahs Anoshim Lumada. The Rabbi says even our Yira is Mitzvahs Anoshim Lumada because we're trained in a certain approach of Yira Shemayim. And we know from the Ikvas Yira that Yira Shemayim has to have a spontaneity to it, which makes it a source of happiness and joy. So therefore, there's the idea, Avrohom has not finished, concluded here, I think, was to tell us that we have to find ways to be mechadesh, some way to come from the inside out to give ourselves new thoughts, new vistas of perspectives. And it could be the only way to do that because human beings are born, so to speak, with tabula rasa, with a clear slate, and the only way you can actually have that slate function is by taking in data and taking in perceptions, but then there has to be some process within ourselves with which we make those perceptions new, and we have new understandings and new perspectives in our Yiras Hashem, Avodas Hashem, and specifically you say about your tefillah, but it's true about all. So Avrohom is teaching us here that we have to actually try and find new ways in order to change our davening. But again, as I said, we have no way of knowing this because we don't have the continuity. But we have not to make our mitzvahs not milumada, not to our entire yira, not something which is lumada, but something which is based on a new, ever new quest to find new understandings and new perspectives and new ways to expand our Yiras Hashem. So I wanted to be mashing a little bit based on this Simcha Zissel, the Alter of Kelm, and Vayikra, Maimer Tafnun Beis. And let me share the screen on this one. Yeah, so he says that here, why are people able to be mechadish in learning and not in yira? Near hasiba, me'ezet time yesh harbe lomdim miyagim b'Torah v'lo b'yira. People toil in Torah and not in yira. Siba sadavar kach. There's a reason like this. Pnimius hu davar kashu. Pnimius is a very difficult thing. It does come to a person only after toil and effort. The thing itself will bring him to Yigia. See, he doesn't understand the sugya. He's got to toil. As opposed to Yira. There is a joke which people make about Yira that it's a stomach ache. Why? If a person has a kid has a headache, he can't use that as an excuse a false excuse to get out of going to school. They check the head. Does he have a fever or not? Shame became better as opposed to stomach ache. Omer Sheeshlo, if a kid says he has a stomach ache, they can't tell the truth whether he has one or not. So too. But Torah can't fill yourself. You understand very well that you're lacking understanding. Mashain Bia as opposed to Yira. Yira is a very fine internal concept. And through the Yira, a person can recognize many things which should not be done. Based on intellectual Yira, or midos, or based on midos, or din, or based on halacha. There's Maimon of us, or not this one. Is this one it? No, it starts before that. Halamin asked Lamed, speaking Yodo Lilmo to Lamed, Lamed Lishmar Vlasos Meskin Yodo, right? So he says that you have to be Lamed Amanas Lasois, which is not so simple. There it says, Maria now, Yira Primus Enomakirosam. Without your internal Yira, you can't recognize them. You just keep putting other people keep in a rote way. And you rev you so by keeping those things that everybody else keeps, you'll think you think I don't need any. I'm good, right? Fascinating. This analogy to stomach ache, where you can fool yourself with having a stomach ache, because it's all internal. So therefore, and others have to trust you have a stomach ache. And so therefore, you think of your shemaim, you don't have a what to toil, kokach, as so much, Torah, we see clearly, without it, you won't understand, you won't know. On the Misha Yesho, you're a primis, somebody has your primis, Nasim primis, so Mayana Novea, internal yira, which you need to work on internally. It doesn't come from the outside. From the outside, you get just mitzvahs and hashimilu mother. On the inside, you can get a Mayan Novea, a gushing fountain, La Rosso, to show him Varo and to clarify to him Harbe Masim Chadoshim. Many new deeds, Shalo Yasu Pisechel, which will not be done, which you should not be doing, sorry. Based on the Seichel of Pnimis Hayira. Harbe Midos Oseh, Harbe Alochos Osolo. If you have Pnimis Hayira, you have the work on your midos, and you have many halachas as well, you're going to get new ones. Lishmar Losos. For a ben kach kiesh arbei goes musar midos. He's going to see there's a lot of toil to be done in musar midos, but only if you work from the inside out, not from the outside in. From the outside in, you can lull yourself into saying, "Look, I'm just like everybody else. I have the same year Shemaim." So your pnimis brings a person the understanding of the need and necessity to toil and make efforts in Yiras Elokim. And that toil and effort brings a person then to Yiras Pnimis, like Yoser Yoser. Anybody who's more Yiras Pnimis, he knows how to deal with his outer chimaisim to direct on Torah. So therefore, anybody, even to keep the entire Torah, you don't have to be worried. Because maybe they're lacking that Yiras Pnimis. Therefore, he doesn't know whether he actually is doing what he's supposed to do on the outside. I think Simcha Sister goes on with this, but I wanted to show something else from Simcha Sister, which I found fascinating. He says, um, "Zel kamnosam zal al tas tfiloscha tkva el rachin tachnu ifnei makom perish ki ikra tfil ashrish bo belibo yira shamayim." The main field is to do instill oneself Yer Shamayim. Shavin Haytape, to understand well, is Kikol Chayav Vitzrachav Tloli Bemisha Amar V'Haya Olam. Shemispal Ev Shar Sheyavo L'Tchunosam. He can't come to this understanding. Im Zerak Becheskas Idias Beis Rabo. If this comes just by rote, what he knows from what he learned. From that, from the time he didn't understand what he was saying. Because you could not understand when you were a youngster what it means a bria from nothing. Spalmi said, that's like about Shuvah's tefillah is so different than FFB's tefillah, because FB started davening before he understood what he was saying. And therefore, it's a tremendous battle to overcome that rote. And even if you understand what you're saying, it's based often on the understanding on what understanding you were taught, what understanding you got at one point, like Avrohom said before. The EF Shalot of the Lispomis, it can't be aroused. Rakshi Yagdil Visponain, Lavin Brias Yesh Miain. Obviously, this is his part of a greater mimer here. Only we understand the creation Ixnilo, Yakim Zegdulas Abayre. And we understand the greatness of Kosh Baruch, she's B'nei Tev Al Kol Eile. We carefully understand all these things. Kichai B'tzrach Ma'avaya Libo, his life and his needs and all his eyes are built. Efshar Klal B'li Rotzen Abore are not possible after Rotzen Hashem. You can't fun of Lasos. So no, you're going to submit yourself to do his will. And then he goes on to speak about how a person can understand the greatness of the Bayer, but that's really beyond our discussion today. But one other thing here, he says, not sure if this is where it was. Anyway, he says here, and somewhere, again, I'm not sure if this is the place where it was. I might be looking in the wrong place, but he says here that how a person can come to meeting to not the thing. Yeah, here it is. Because why is Hashem asked for Yira? Commotion Tinok Zoga Dank we near them Mativosho Danka v'tzorach lechapes der chochma lavim bedaito. No, this is not the one he says. This is not the one I'm looking for. But he says somewhere that very often, if you can't something which you say Lashon HaKodesh, because you don't doesn't have an impact upon you, and that's why sometimes you have to translate things into your language. I'd have to stop and find this, but in any event, I think the point is that a person has to find ways in order to make an impression upon himself, and without finding those ways to make an impression upon himself, so a person doesn't have that. Let me just see if I can find this quickly. Person find a way to make a impression on himself. The person just remains with the force of habit. Let's see if it actually works to find. Yeah, here it is. He says, Tir Davenifla. Oh, I just stopped to share it. Tir Davenifla. You'll see an amazing thing. Can you send you amaze kol edvarim? Things a person says don't make an impression. Talking about some Beloshan Ashkenaz or jargon. If translate to German or to Yiddish, Yasel of Roshem. It makes an impression. Reishis chashafti. I initially thought Tama Dover is bizeh. They shlosh kodesh. Ain't not saying the sofa shkur loshon name because it's not our mother sprach, not our mother speech. Mother mother tongue. But I think now it's different. We got it in our youth without any taste or fragrance. It doesn't make a Russian impression upon us. Building, Bildung, or Russian jargon in Yiddish, Lehrer Lernung. Toras Hora, a teaching, a lesson. Kimilas Eile Bildung Lehrer Hora, Mushrashim Banu Etzleno Tama Chochma Laskolas Hadvarim B'muvan Bildung. They teach us a certain way which is not inculcated upon us in the same way as Torah is. Derech v'ras advarim muvan Torah hora. Midas Torah no mushreshes leno shem shem tam neimus hachachma v'yamavur kanal. It doesn't impart to us the pleasantness of chachma. It's by us like the command and the decree. Just by rote. Tanishach etzlo alzel often bli argesh neimus klau. Kizet teva mushresha etzlo, because that's the nature which is embedded by us. Tikia philosophic she schil moed talmidim. The philosophers start learning talmidim. Hikdim lem makor mem sidiasam rishona. That brute initial understanding. Kilo yom noldu. Akom mitama now. So again, we have to. It's fascinating. This requires a lot of analysis. But he's saying that Torah, in of itself, the word Torah even does not make upon us the same impression that a word which you can use, which is even alternative word in Lashon HaKodesh, can have upon us, but can have about us an impression, but certainly a word which is defined in a different language. So this is not directly related to, but we're talking about by the word building. There's a German word that refers to a process of personal and cultural maturation that combines education, knowledge, and moral and emotional maturity. So sometimes we have to look for a different word in order that something should have an impact upon us in our previous in a way which did not have an impact upon us previously. So again, the message from Avrohom Eliyahu, amplified a bit by Simcha Zissel, is that we have to have ways of being or Europenimis in order to make sure that we don't get stuck in the rut that our senses have brought into us from our earliest youth, and for things which is required for even great Hasidim Rishonim, hours upon hours of work, each tefillah, in order to be able to accomplish that. So whatever we can accomplish in trying to get out of Hergel, to get into Chiddush, it's going to take a lot of work, and work which perhaps you don't have time or inclination to put into, but it comes from Pnimius to Chitzonius, and to fight what comes from Chitzonius into Pnimius. Okay.